Next, we have Patrick Dorinson. He's a political communication strategist and a radio talk show host and commentator who's been on both sides of the aisle and in the aisle itself, and having worked over the last 25 years for Republicans and Democrats in both politics and government. He believes in rugged individualism and self-reliance. He believes that encroaching, intrusive government is the most dangerous threat to our freedom, and believes that the simple truth that right is right and wrong is wrong still has meaning today. Remember, he wrote it on our hearts. Is wrong still has meaning today, even in this age of moral relativism and anything goes culture. So let's welcome the Cowboy Libertarian.
Thanks. I wonder who that fella is. I'd like to meet him someday. Well, nothing better than being in a room full of patriots. Give yourselves a hand for all the work you've been doing since 2000. Now, I always like to bring something with me to show folks. So, we have a candidate running for president. No, I don't mean Mr. Trump. We have a candidate running for president who, her and her husband are like gypsies. They get out of town just before the sheriff comes and breaks up their fortune-telling ring. And we all know that Hillary Clinton has slipped the noose quite a few times, as has her husband. But he never does anything wrong. Well, and you know that she favors a certain type of clothing, the pantsuit, right? Well, I got her one.
It's an orange one.
And mine is already, it's all ready for her. Got an easy to get in and out of zipper. And it's got her name, and this is her number. So this is what we're going to put on Hillary Rodham Clinton.
All right.
Take a picture of it and put it on Facebook. We need to forward that to Mr. Trump.
I don't know if I got the right size either.
That's kind of small.
Now wait a second, there's ladies present. We're not going to be talking about sizes of clothing. Always like to tell a story too. You know, there's a great old Ronald Reagan story, since we're up here in these orchards and everything else, the beauty of rural California. You know, Ronald Reagan used to tell a story about a fellow that was running for office in a pretty heavily Democratic district. And this fellow was a Republican. So he's driving around to all the farms and kind of meeting everybody. So he drives into this farmyard and he sees the farmer and he gets out of his car and he goes over and says, "Hello, I'm running for office and I'm running as a Republican." And the farmer looks at him and says, "My gosh, Ma, get over here. There's a Republican in town." Well, they were both Democrats. So he said, "Well, we're willing to listen to your speech. Go ahead, give us a speech." And while the politician was looking around for, a podium or something to give his speech from, so he climbs up and he steps on this manure pile. And he gives his speech. And after the speech, the farmer says to him, "My gosh, that's a pretty good speech from a Republican." He said, "Yeah, but I did it on a Democratic platform." Now, I got to tell you guys something. This country would be a hell of a lot worse off without the Tea Party. I mean, you're the only guys that wouldn't know how to win elections. 2010, what happened? The Tea Party movement And your anger, which was channeled into voting, gave the Republicans the House of Representatives. What did they do with it? Nothing. In 2012, what happened? Mitt Romney, surrounded by a bunch of yahoos in blue blazers, khaki pants, and kissing his behind every 5 minutes, a bunch of consultants, and he lost. Then you guys, in 2014, did it again. They said, we need to get the Senate. So what did you do? You delivered the Senate. What did they do? This, you're the only guys that know how to win. Now they say, well, it was an off year, Democrats don't vote, and all this other stuff. Listen, you guys don't use consultants, you use common sense. You know what a consultant is in Washington? It's the guy that looks at your watch, tells you what time it is, and then steals the watch. So before I get on to the real meat of my talk, I do want to, God bless all of you, because without you, God knows where we'd be. We would be a lot worse off. And it is also so wonderful, and I hope the day comes before well, up or down, I want to be able to stand at a podium where that's real.
Yes!
That green flag will be a state flag. Then we can start charging the people from the Bay Area to cross our border. I'm figuring $1,000 a car.
How much for water?
Oh, our water's going to cost a lot of money. And it ain't going to be bottled, it's going to be cup your hands, kid. Now, I want to first give kind of an overall picture where we are, and then go into some national stuff and some congressional stuff, and then the campaign. Yesterday, they're burning down Milwaukee. For those of us who remember 1968, you remember the riots in Detroit?
Yeah.
Remember 67, the riots in Cleveland? Remember 66, the riots in Harlem? When you go back and look at the cause of those riots, the questions are the same. Bad education, no jobs, no this, no that, right? It's been 50 years since the Great Society. 50 years. The war on poverty is 50 years old. It's the longest war in history. Even the Europeans couldn't beat it. And what have we got to show for it? An empty wallet. And our cities are worse than they were before. The family in these cities, the African American families, have broken down to the point where they aren't families. You have 5 generations of kids growing up in houses or apartments where they've never seen a man or a woman get up in the morning and go to work. We decided we were going to get rid of religion in this country. And what have we got? You got a generation of kids walking around like this, bumping into things. And even the poor people in the ghetto got these things. And you paid for it.
Obama phone.
But look at this, 50 years and we're in this, the society's breaking down more than it ever has. And there's a lot of problems that are just bubbling right beneath the surface. Now, there's so many things, I mean, I could list all the problems, but it'd be here all night just listing problems. But another key one is the shameless, disgusting, I don't know why the hell it happened, treatment of our veterans. I'm telling you one thing. Here's what we ought to do. Every veteran gets a gold card. This card, you can go anywhere. Secondly, and I haven't done too much research, so this is just a thought of mine. So, the Pentagon, when you are mustered in, you're in the Pentagon jurisdiction. You muster out, you're in Veterans Affairs. Well, why do we need a whole nother big old department with more bureaucrats? Why don't we put the Veterans Affairs as a division of the Pentagon, so when you muster out, gee, guess what? Your records are going to stay the same all the way through.
When you muster out, you're still in.
This is the deal. I don't know why this is so hard. We have to make sure that the people that have laid down their lives for this country get treated properly. Now, nationally, what do we got? Well, we got about $21 trillion in debt. We got phony unemployment numbers because they're not counting the people that have left the workforce. We have a loss of respect abroad. Everybody's kicking sand in our face. Washington, D.C., that 68 square miles surrounded by reality, makes ancient Rome look moral. These guys get up in the morning, drink a cup of corruption, and go to work. What's the fastest growing area in the country? Washington. When I was in Washington recently, I was coming from Maryland at the CPAC conference, and I was heading to the airport at Dulles. I counted 12 construction cranes, and that was in the space of a couple of miles. They're building everything. Rome is getting bigger, I have to tell you. Rome is getting bigger. You're paying for it, but Rome is getting bigger. Northern Virginia. Virginia used to be a solid red state. What happened? Government grew. Those people got money. And they're living in Northern Virginia. So that cancels out all the rural votes. Sound familiar? Rural America, once again, takes it in shorts. And Washington, D.C. just keeps on rolling along with your money. We've got mountains of regulations written by unelected bureaucrats. You know, if I was president, the first thing I'd do? Once we did the inauguration and all that stuff, I'd set a bonfire on the front lawn of the White House. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to throw in the tax code, throw in the Federal Register of Regulations, and we're going to throw in a few economists for kindling. And these lobbyists, with the little Gucci loafers, you know, with them little gold things on them? We ought to invite him out to a dairy. Or a pig farm, even better. And don't tell them where they shouldn't step. Also remind them don't kick a cow pie on a hot day, but that's another story. Now here in California, we're on the knife's edge. Now, the Democrats like to say, or the Sacramento Bee likes to say, let's put it, they say, well, you know, Jerry Brown, he's just holding the line against the other guys in the legislature who want to spend all the money. First of all, don't believe the Sacramento Bee. And second of all, these guys, when they say spending like drunken sailors, that's an insult to drunken sailors, the way these guys do. But think about this state. This is a state of mini states. San Francisco thinks they're Monte Carlo. The Silicon Valley thinks they're the end of the, you know, we're the be-all to end-all. Hollywood, L.A. And we don't have enough folks. So we keep getting outvoted. That's why we need things like this. If they want to live in their little Monte Carlo, that's fine. But their milk's going to cost more. And their food's going to cost more. And I'm not talking Whole Foods prices. These guys go to restaurants, spend $100 on quail butts and a cream sauce. There's more plate than food. Also Silicon Valley, think about it. 50 miles east of Silicon Valley, some of the poorest people in this state. There's 40% unemployment. You think they care? No. They build walls around their house, like Mark Zuckerberg did at his house in Hawaii, obstructing the view of all the neighbors. But he doesn't want a wall to defend you from illegal immigration. In fact, they want more illegal immigration. But even worse than that, they want all more of these H-1B visas. They want to bring in more people to put Americans out of work. Again, you make me president, I'm going to say, sorry, that ain't the way it's going to work. You hire Americans first. If you got any jobs left over, you find somebody else. We got all these young people around wallowing in debt because they went to colleges who paid, are paying professors $300,000 a year not to teach. Look at Berkeley, look at UC Davis. You're spending all this money, borrowing money. Now, why did that happen? How did that happen? Well, let's see, the government got in the loan business for students, right? And what did the school say? Money. They saw a pot of money, so they started raising prices. Oh, you're going to pay more for this, and you're going to pay more for that. We're going to pay professor over here this.
Give them a house and a car.
That's the way it is. We're a one-party government. We all know that. This is like living in Mexico in the 40s, when the PRI party, the People's Revolutionary Institutional Party, ran the country. And they had another opposition party that they let stick around. But they ran everything. And that's where we are now. And we have absolute weak Republican leadership. They don't even have the guts to propose anything. And when you ask them why, you know what they tell you? Well, we don't want to rock the boat. We want to make sure we get something out of this. They don't even try. There's an old story when General Eisenhower was going to be appointed. He was being groomed or being talked to about being the head of the Allied command invading Europe. And General George C. Marshall, great American, said, this is the Philippines, hadn't quite fallen, but it looked pretty bad, 1942. So he says to Eisenhower, what do you think we should do? And he says, I want you to go home and think about it. Well, Eisenhower came back the next day and he said, well, General, we should try. Because our soldiers and the Filipinos will forgive failure. They won't forgive abandonment. And it's the same thing here. You have to try. When you delivered the Senate, when you delivered the House to the Republicans, you try. Yes, you know he's going to veto it. Of course you know that. But fight for something. The reason Donald Trump is winning right now is because he's willing to fight. The other guys, what do we get? We get nothing but 10-point plans, 5-point plans, 16-point plans, and a lot of mushy, mealy-mouthed talk. Right? Jeb, exclamation point, Bush. He spent $150 million going after Marco Rubio. Why didn't he spend $150 million going after Hillary Clinton?
They're buddies.
20%, and the guy who ran the campaign got 20% off the top of $150 million. You don't have to be a math genius to know that he's doing fine.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing with the Republicans in the legislature, they got no agenda. There's not a 5 points where they say, okay, we're going to push for this, or we're going to push for that, or whatever. And, whenever there's a hearing, and the Democrats bring witnesses, the Republicans are told they can't bring any witnesses. Imagine that. Or, we don't have enough time for your witnesses. You know how you fix that? If you're on the committee and you're a Republican, you get up there and say, Mr. Chairman, you've been shutting us down for all these years. And up in this front row, we have experts on the issue that are different than your experts, and I want to tell the members of the media they're ready to be interviewed. Fight. F-I-G-H-T. It ain't that tough a word. Then I'm starting to think, why do we even need a legislature? There's 17 ballot initiatives in November. Now, the ones that she's talking about, we need. But there's At 17, you're going to go in that voting booth. You better bring a Starbucks and a chair, because you're going to be there a while. And that's not including all the local stuff that they're going to throw in here. Quarter-cent sales tax here, half a cent here, a little bit here, a little bit there, you know, they nickel and dime you to death. So, if we're being asked to make all these decisions, what the hell do we need a legislature for? Now, this year, 2016, marks the 50th anniversary of the worst thing California voters ever passed: the full-time legislature.
Yep.
In 1966, Ronald Reagan was running for governor. Pat Brown was running for his third term. They talked Reagan into signing the ballot language so that when the voter looked at the voter pamphlet, it said Reagan supports it and Brown supports it, so they figured, well, it must be okay. And it passed by 62%. Reagan later told Ed Meese it was the worst thing he ever did, and that includes when he was president, because he gave us our own native criminal class, the legislature. The assault on the Second Amendment. I'm not going to add anything to what was said. It was said very well. I will say this, though. If they come up to my house, first thing they're going to see on the signpost is a sign. And it says, if you can read this, you're in range. So remember, sign the petitions on this. This is very important. Because if we get this stuff on the ballot, we can defeat some of this stuff. Background check for ammunition. I'm going to Cabela's. And then they'll, you know what they'll do? You'll go to Cabela's, then you'll come through the station, right? And the guy will say, "You got any fresh fruit?" "Nope." "Okay, got any bullets?" "Ooh, maybe." But my advice is, if there's another economic downturn in the state, invest in precious metals, gold and lead. Now, the country. Congress, I'll tell you. We got delivered this Affordable Care Act. That's neither affordable, nor does it provide any care. And it's fallen apart, just like everybody said it was. How many people had their premiums going up? Oh yeah, they're going up big time. I just got a nice letter from Blue Cross. Dear family member, one we ain't related, but, and they told me expect a 13% increase in your premium. Good luck. And my deductible just went up $2,000 more. So I'm going to have some heart surgery just to make some money on the deal. Congress has no tax reform plan. Nothing. Nothing. And they still can't do the most basic function of government. They can't even get the appropriations process done. Now, I don't know if you know how it works, but in Congress, Senate and House, there's 12 appropriations committees. Different things. Defense, and everybody's got an appropriation. Agriculture. And here's how it works. You pass a budget. Budget's supposed to be passed by the end of February. Early April, both houses are supposed to reconcile the budget. Remember, the budget's just a blueprint. Then you take the blueprint and you hand the blueprint to the appropriations committees, and then the appropriations committees decide who's going to get the money. Sounds simple, right? What do we have every year? We have at Christmas time, oh my God, they're going to shut the government down. I won't be able to go to the Washington Monument. Well, it's closed anyways because they're fixing it, but, right? We have this Perils of Pauline every year. Oh my gosh, the country's going to fall off the cliff because we didn't pass a budget. Then do your job. Pretty simple. They used to do it. You know the last time they passed all those appropriations bills and were signed by a president? 1994. That's it. We haven't done it since. The other thing Congress is supposed to do is authorize stuff, see? Because you're not supposed to give nobody no money unless they've been authorized. That's why we have authorizing committees. And what's that do? That means you're the Department of Labor, and you go up before the Labor Committee, and the guy says, how many jobs programs you got? Ooh, I don't know. Well, according to my record, you got 45. You need them all? That's what the process is for. Congress does have a role. And if they ever did their jobs the way they're supposed to, we wouldn't have half the mess we got. Can you imagine? I'll tell you again, if I was president, remember the Base Closure Commission? Where nobody could agree what to close. Nobody. Because everybody's going, my ox is going to get gored if I vote, oh my gosh, they're going to close my base. So they formed the Base Realignment Closure Commission, BRAC. And what did BRAC do? They got the bases that they thought were obsolete and decided to either repurpose them, like Beale, or not Beale, but McClellan, or Mather, or close them all together. But you had to vote up or down. You couldn't add amendments to it. Once it got through the BRAC Commission and it landed in Congress, sorry guys, up or down, that's it. Well, I propose an elimination commission. We're going to teach Washington a word they don't know. Eliminate. Because, see, they use the word cut. Cut only means, I'm going to give you less money than I gave you last year. But you still are going to get the money. And trust me, bureaucrats know how to hide money under the mattress, in their socks. Anyway, so we'd have elimination commission. And we'd take a lot of these programs, and they'd have to go up before a committee of citizens just like yourselves. And we bang the meeting to order, get the fella up there. All right, buddy, you're the head of the Department of Labor. You got 15 minutes to tell me why I should keep funding you. And if they can't do it in 15 minutes, you're done. Now, that's a little radical. But imagine putting a lot of stuff into a bucket and handing it back to Congress and saying, you have to vote up or down to eliminate. You're never going to get budgets under control unless you learn how to get rid of stuff forever. And that means some of these bureaucrats. So the system isn't working as it's supposed to. Now, I went and heard Paul Ryan recently, and he did have some good ideas, but I'm of the wait and see because I've been lied to so many times. I don't want to be lied to again. Globally, well, let's see. After 7.5 years, the Middle East is a mess. Libya is now an ISIS training ground. Syria is, we don't know who's killing who. The Turkey, they want to go back to the Ottoman Empire. This fella Erdogan, he wants to be the next sultan. You talk about a caliphate, it already exists. It's called Turkey. Iran. Barack Obama ought to sell t-shirts. You know what they ought to say? We made a deal with the Iranians, and all I got was this lousy t-shirt. Because we didn't get anything. We just gave them $400 million so they could go fund terrorism. In cash. Because they insisted. And here's the other thing. The president gets up there, this was their money to begin with. No, it wasn't. That was a deal we made with the Shah, the old government. Well, sorry, Shah's dead, that deal's off. You want your money, come get it. No, we gave it to him. And who got it? The military of Iran. That money it was on the tarmac for 20 minutes. Trust me, they were breaking it up into bundles to ship to Hezbollah, Hamas, and everybody else that hates us.
And it was in their currency.
Well, I don't think they're using euros.
Congress paid it.
They couldn't put it in Arab currency because the thing would have been so high they never got it on the airplane.
Where was Congress? I thought they paid the bills. How does the president just give money away?
Well, you see, that was in one of their accounts. I know. preaching to the choir. And by the way, everybody in Libya is asking these questions about Benghazi and everything else, and I have questions too. But one of my big questions is, and I have not, either the reporters are as dumb as posts, or they don't know how to ask a question.
The posts are smarter.
This is a great peanut gallery y'all got here. I want to know this and this only. Remember, they had the consulate, and then the CIA annex. So let's go back just a little bit to why we went into Libya in the first place. First of all, we had Muammar Gaddafi so scared of his own shadow. He was actually feeding us information. Because we find, you know, after Ronald Reagan blew up a few tents that he had and killed some few people, he said, right? And then George Bush got him to give up weapons. So things were okay there. The rest of North Africa was a mess. It was the last place. So remember what Hillary said, and remember what the Democrat says? We cannot allow a massacre in Benghazi. Remember? Go back and look. Benghazi was the reason because Gaddafi's forces were going to go into the town and kill everybody. Okay, that didn't happen. Gaddafi gets killed and the country's in chaos. Everybody's got an AK-47 and everybody knows how to use it. But we had, it's close to 100 spies, CIA operatives in Benghazi. Why? Did anybody ever ask? When I see these hearings with these congressmen grandstanding, it's the simplest of questions. Mrs. Clinton, what were 100 CIA operatives doing in a dangerous place that you yourself said was very bad? Nobody's asked. I think you're going to find out what they were doing. They were running guns. And I guarantee you that ISIS has a lot of nice, brand new, US-made, shoulder-fired surface-to-air missiles. Want to bet? And that's what they don't want found out. China. These guys are making islands. They take a sand spit and make an island. Why? They want to kick us out of the Pacific. Who are the last guys that wanted to kick us out of the Pacific? The Japanese. And why? They're not building these islands for fishermen. They're putting military bases there. They're aggressive. They're building a military that's going to be bigger than ours someday. Now let me get this one thing. I don't want to start sending boys off anywhere. No way. But we better start thinking about what, because these guys don't think in decades. They don't even think of election cycles like this country. Hell, this country thinks in when the NFL season starts and stops. These people think in 1,000-year increments. They'll wait us out. They don't care. And the European Union is on its deathbed. And quite frankly, somebody ought to step on the oxygen hose. The British people were smart. They said, no, we want out of this mess. First of all, we got enough crazy people here, we're not going to import any more. And they wanted to stand up and be Englishmen again. Just like everybody here wants to stand up and be Americans again. You know, I saw an interview with a working class guy in London. And the interviewer's woman's British, they're both British, and she's saying, so you're for Brexit? And he goes, yeah. And she says, well, you know that David Beckham, the soccer star, is against Brexit. And you know what the man's answer was? He don't live here no more. He lives in America. Think of that. The guy's, he's a working guy. But he's probably smarter than half the politicians in Parliament, because he says, don't come and snow me with this stuff. Don't come and tell me David Beckham. The guy's a millionaire living in Los Angeles. I'm living in East London Where my city, where I was born, is getting overrun by a bunch of people who don't even speak English. Of course he's mad. Now the election. Now we get to the fun stuff. I went to the RNC convention. And I get up in the morning after saying, man, that was great last night. And I'm watching the media, I'm thinking, are you guys at the same convention I'm at? They made a whole big deal about a rules fight. Which, you know, a rules fight is like watching paint dry. Because it's, you know, and here they're arguing about an arcane rule that, you know, the average voter, I mean, they don't care about, that's inside baseball, who cares about that? But the media's going, will this damage the party? You know, give me a break. They're arguing about the seating at the banquet, for crying out loud. And then Ted Cruz gave his speech. And people say, why did Trump let him speak? Well, think about it. If you don't let him speak, his people are going to be mad. If you let him speak, let him speak. He's going to say what he's going to say. And he's going to have to live with the consequences of what he said. Whether you agree with it, what he did, or disagree, he has to live with the consequences. Now, I'll tell you, I've gotten to know Rick Perry quite well over the last year. And I saw him at the convention. I said, you know, Governor, I saw you in Texas just before the Indiana primary. And you were a Cruz man. He said, yes, sir. And I said, and boy, as soon as Cruz dropped out, you went to Trump. And he said, man gives his word, he gives his word. I said I'd support the nominee. He looked like he was going to be the nominee, so I said yes. That's what you do. And he goes, that's what we Texans do. And I said, what about Ted? He goes, that's what we Texans do. I'll let you figure out the rest. Now, in Trump and Hillary, first of all, I've been in this business 30 years. Everybody take a deep breath right now. Good, it's a long way to November. And these are battles, these are bare-knuckle brawls. I have just been asked to assist the Great America PAC, so I'm probably going to be doing some work for them. But when I look at this election, it doesn't worry me where things are right now, because I think there's a hidden Brexit vote out there. Yep. I think there's people who are lying to pollsters. They're not telling them what they really think, because they don't want to be accused of something that they aren't. And the way the media is today, they don't want to talk about it. But anecdotally, go talk to people in other parts of the country. They'll whisper to you sometimes. I was in Cleveland, waitress, so who are you for?
Yeah, that's it.
I said, why? I'm tired of losing. She's a waitress, making tips. She sees no future with the way things are going. Now, I want to just take one little side thing. You know, you guys are the original Patriots. You guys trace your lineage to 1775. And 1773, actually, when the T went over the side. But 1775, Lexington and Concord. We're all heirs of that. You guys actually did something with it, unlike a lot of Americans. You're coming here to a meeting on a hot summer night. You knock on doors, you do all the kind of work that needs to be done. You're trying to start a new state. That's all hard work. But you guys are the real patriots. And in the Republican Party now, they got a bunch of Tories. You remember the Tories? The Loyalists? Here's what they said. The Patriot says, I'm through with this. I'm tired of having my tax money stolen from me. I'm tired of having this happen to me. By God, I'm going to do something about it. And the Tories said, well, things aren't that bad. We can live with the king. Yes, so he taxes us a little bit. But gee, we got the protection of the British Navy. So what? You're a land country. So these people who are trying to, the big shots in the Republican Party, they're the Tories. Remember what happened to the Tories? A lot of them went back to England. A lot of them went to Canada. So maybe they should go to Canada. But all these people, these Bushes and everybody else, who told you, oh my gosh, hold your nose and vote for Romney. Hold your nose and vote for McCain. Hold your nose and vote for this person, Meg Whitman. Who, by the way, is the first runner-up in the Ben Franklin lookalike contest. And Madeleine Albright is the winner of the John Adams lookalike contest. Same amount of hair. But that's the Tories. Those are the people that would much rather knuckle under and drop to their knees and worship the Democratic Queen than to try and defeat her. If everybody would pull on the same end of the dang rope, where do you think we'd be? We'd be winning. They want it, and then, you know, I saw this Wall Street Journal guy, and you know what he says? Well, Hillary Clinton is survivable. Maybe for you, you little punk. By the way, when you look at all their bylines, they're all Ivy Leaguers, you know, they all went to Middlebury Prep School and all this other stuff. We need more public school people in government. Yeah. Then there are these 50 guys who signed a letter, you know, national security experts, who signed a letter saying, oh my gosh, you know, we have to, where did I put that thing? There it is. Trump is just, we can't, national security demands this and that, right? Well, my favorite was what Donald Trump said to the letter. The names on this letter are the ones the American people should look to for answers on why the world is a mess. And we thank him for coming forward so everyone in this country knows who deserves the blame for making the world such a dangerous place. That was the perfect answer. Now, I think that the House is going to hold. I think the Senate's going to hold too. So I'm not too worried about this election. Only here in California for the U.S. Senate, we have a choice between Loretta Sanchez and Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris, who's better known as Willie Brown's 14th girlfriend. I think she's 14. No, she's 13, excuse me. By the way, if you want to really mess them up, vote for Sanchez.
I think everybody ought to.
Every Republican ought to vote for Sanchez just to keep that Kamala Harris out, because they're already talking about her as she's the next Obama. Oh gosh. Now, remember how the media treated you guys in 2009, 2010? Oh yeah. Remember how the GOP elites treated you?
Just last week.
How dare you knock on the door of the country club? You guys are the caddies from Caddyshack. You guys are Rodney Dangerfield. Hey, it's a nice hat. Right? They don't want you in the club. You're the skunk at the garden party. Yet you delivered 2 elections, didn't you? Now, George Will, the National Review, I'm thinking, bunch of guys who get paid to think. There's not a callous among them. There's not a sweaty brow among them. There's not a trucker's tan among them. There's not worry around the table that you can pay for things among them. There's not how my kid's going to get an education among them. They're a part of a group that they don't even think you exist. Oh, they talk about you all the time. New York Times reporter, well, you know, I was out in California. I visited some rural areas. I got to know the people. How long did you stay? Oh, I must have been there 3 hours. Right? They look down their noses at you. You're just bumpkins to them. Only you're the smartest damn people around. I wouldn't give a hoot and a holler for any of them. You stuck them all together. Clinton Foundation is full of corruption and should be investigated like the mafia. In fact, I heard the mafia is taking lessons now from the Clinton Foundation. Now I want to do a word about Donald Trump and his detractors. And I'm going to tell you a couple of stories. Do you remember the movie, how many remember the movie Braveheart? Right? Great movie, right? If you haven't seen it, rent it or Netflix it or whatever else you got to do nowadays. Remember in Braveheart, there's a scene when they're all standing there ready for battle, right? The Scotsmen. And they've been here before. And they're sitting there going, they're looking like, going, here we are. Yeah. And then the noblemen ride down, right? And what are the Scotsmen? Oh, here we go again. They're going to go get something and we're going to get screwed. Right? Because the nobles always would go down, surrender to the English, prematurely, of course. Without, no battle. So the nobles are going to go down, surrender to the English. The English will give the noblemen more land, they'll give them more money, they'll give them anything to keep the peasants down. Because the English, the Scottish nobles are basically working for the Englishmen. And all the guys are going, oh, here we go. And who rides up with his face painted in blue? Old William Wallace. And they say, we're willing to fight, but we're not fighting for them. And what did he tell them? Then fight for yourselves. Stand up. We're going to get killed. Yeah, you might get killed. You might die. But wouldn't you rather have one chance, just one chance, to the oppressors? And they said, all right. And he told the Scottish nobles right off, they're going to go down to surrender. And William Wallace's friend says, where are you going? He goes, I'm going down to pick a fight. And he does. He basically goes down and tells the English, get the hell out of my country that you've been raping and pillaging for the last 100 years. It's time to leave. And he beats the living daylights out of them. Right? Yep. What happens to him later? Those same Scottish nobles betrayed him to the English. The Scottish nobles are the Republican elites of this country. They're the ones telling you who to vote for. They're the ones telling you that they're going to do okay, but you're not going to get much.
They're the Tories.
They're the Tories. They're the Loyalists. They're the Scottish nobles. They're anybody who sells anybody out. Fill in the blank. Because they'd rather sell you out to save their own skins and to protect the sweet little game they got going in Washington. Go be a congressman for 10 years, what do you get next? Bingo! 7-figure salary as a lobbyist. Yep. Right? Now, 1964, there was another guy kind of like Trump, named Barry Goldwater. Barry Goldwater had an even less of a chance than Donald Trump, and I think Donald Trump's still going to win. But even less of a chance because he's running against Lyndon Johnson. Jack Kennedy hadn't even been dead a year. So what's going to happen? I mean, Barry knew he was in for it. But he was going to run on the principles that he decided were valuable to put forward. And that election at least gave us Ronald Reagan because he made a speech in October that raised, it sounds so quaint nowadays, he raised $1 million in one night for the Republican Party. And that back then, that was huge, to quote Mr. Trump. Okay? And it launched his career. The speech is called A Time for Choosing. If you haven't ever seen it, go to YouTube and watch it, because it's still true today, everything he said. And Goldwater was treated so badly by the press, so badly by the Republican establishment. And he won the nomination in San Francisco in 1964 at the Cow Palace. And a guy named William Scranton, who was a governor of Pennsylvania, came from a very well-to-do family, and Rockefeller, you remember Rockefeller? They wanted to deny Goldwater the nomination, and they put out the most vile stuff about him. One person who had lost the governorship of California in 1962 happened to be working in a New York law firm at the time. Took a leave of absence from his job and campaigned everywhere he could for Barry Goldwater. That man's name is Richard Nixon. In 1968, Richard Nixon was rewarded for his loyalty to the party, and he was given the nomination. There was no President Scranton, because Scranton was going to run in 68, and he did. There was no President Rockefeller. He was a vice president by appointment that they dumped. These people that are today saying they'll never support Trump, saying they're going to take their little toys and go home, let them go. And remember, if it doesn't work out this November, remember the Judas goats who led us to slaughter. Because that's what they are. They lead us up the ramp into the truck, but there's a nice little exit for them. So they don't have to go in the truck and head to the slaughterhouse. Finally, what can we do? Well, you're already doing it. By being here tonight, you're doing it. And remember, their days are numbered. Everything comes to an end. Washington, D.C. is just like Rome. Partying, messing around. And the barbarians are at the gate. Only in this sense, the barbarians are their fellow citizens. We're just fed up. I would suggest that we try and do a few things in California, the gun stuff. We've got to stand up on all this local stuff. And I personally would love to see us in 2018 take on a part-time legislature.
Yes, sir. That's how we stop.
There's only one way to stop these people. Cut off their oxygen. If they want to be you know, I was in Texas, you know, they only meet every other year. For 120 days, that's it. I sat with legislators. What do you do? Oh, I own 3 radio stations in Houston. What do you do? Oh, I live out in Lubbock, and I've got an insurance business, and they're all business types. Yeah, there's some lawyers in there, but that means they still have to have a law practice. They can't just have a shingle on the door. They got other things to do. They don't have 900 bills every 2 years. They don't have all this ridiculous nonsense. Yeah, every January, I'm afraid to go outside. You know why? Because they passed a law that takes effect in January, and I might be breaking law by breathing. You know, with all the environmental regulations, I probably have greenhouse gases coming out of me. At both ends. And the one thing I do want to leave you with is that we've got to get some more young people. I notice young people back there. We've got to get these young people, this snowflake generation, we've got to get to them. You know, they want safe spaces. Oy. They don't want to have to do this, and they couldn't find their way home without their phone. You know, and they're playing Pokemon. You know, you've got, yeah, it's these people are on mind crack. That's a good idea. And, you know, we've got to restore some of the good old-fashioned values. And I know you've heard it before, and a lot of speakers say it. But whatever happened to yes, sir, and no, sir, yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am? I still say it. Whatever happened to, excuse me, the little common courtesies? If I have one more punk kid come up behind me in my pickup truck with one of those fast little cars that sounds like a sewing machine on steroids, I'm going to follow him. And I'm going to go right up to him and I'm going to say, you follow me like that again, buddy, and you're going to get a face full of grill. But anyways, we've got to do something to get more young people involved because they're only involved on the left. We've got to get more on our side. Now, the great news is, When I go to, and I mean more locally, because if you go to CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Conference, they give special tickets to young people. So they get lower cost, they give them lower cost rooms, they eat a little bit of the cost so they can get a lot of young people, and you ought to see the dynamics there. I wish you could show it to everybody, because you'd see that there's hope. And they know all the gadgets, they know all the ways to message, they know all the stuff that we don't. So I would say this, we, with our wisdom, and you know what they say about wisdom, wisdom comes from experience. Most of it bad experience with women and bulls for men. But we've got wisdom because we've done it all. They've got energy and talent to get it out there. You've got to put the two together. Passing something on to your grandchildren or your children or your great-grandchildren, the best thing you can pass it on to them is a free America. That still values this flag. That still values the principles of the Constitution. And it still values the Pledge of Allegiance. They all sound like basic things. But that's our mission. Our mission, as we get older, is to leave this country a little better than we found it. And right now, that's kind of dicey. But we still have time. Hell, 60 is the new 40. At least I hope it is. I leave you with this, what we used to say when I used to do political campaigns. Tell everybody, just before they went about their day's business, early to bed, early to rise, work like hell and organize. Thank you. Any questions? Yes, sir.
What do you think of Sarah Palin? She was a lot in that 2010 election. She did an awful lot to get those.
I think she did a lot. I think she's done herself a lot of disservice. I think recently she's kind of gone a little too rogue. I still like her. I think one of the problems with her is they threw her out there before she was ready. Let's just remember one thing. Remember the first interview she did with Katie Couric? Okay. Katie Couric of CBS was the first interview Sarah Palin did after the convention. Why would you pick Katie Couric? I'll tell you why.
They fed her to the wolves.
I'll tell you why. Yeah. Nicole Wallace, who you see on PMSNBC, Nicole Wallace, right? She is a personal friend of Katie Couric. She was the McCain communications director. She set it up, knowing full well what would happen. And now she's on TV calling herself a conservative. Steve Schmidt, who you see on MSNBC, right? He was the campaign manager. He authorized the selection. And I know personally Andy Davis, the man who was sent from the campaign to Alaska to interview her. And as soon as she got on the ticket, they turned their back on her. And they let her sink. It was a setup. So when you see these people on TV, you know, talking about all this stuff, remember, they're the ones that sold her out. I think if she'd have, remember, she was a rising star. She was still governor. She could have risen a little bit more, you know what I mean? And get your sea legs under you. You go on this, I'm telling you, I've been in this stuff. This national campaign, Donald Trump's finding out. They're going to carve you up like a Thanksgiving turkey. And they don't care. Because the media is no longer reporting what's happening. The media now has decided they are the arbiters of what you should do. And if you don't follow their prescriptions on any issue, then you are the bumpkins. And you are the idiots. And we are the enlightened ones. Throw a rope over every lamppost. Reporters for Christmas. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I want to ask you a question. I watched the Fox News, and I was always encouraged by the Fox News. But then they put a person on there like Millie.
Megyn Kelly?
Yeah. And I don't understand her. It sounds like to me when she talks, she's trying to get Trump defeated. What's your...
My impression of Megyn Kelly?
Yeah.
Well, we used to have a saying in politics, never smell your own exhaust.
You used to.
And this woman has got her lips wrapped around her exhaust pipe. In the sense of, she believes that she's some kind of, great media star. First of all, I never got Megyn Kelly. I think she's loud.
Rude.
I think she's, I never got it. I never got Gretchen Carlson. They tell me, well, she went to law school. I said, well, so what? I'd rather trust a guy that can drive a combine.
School of Hard Knocks.
Yeah, I mean, they talk about, they realize they went to Harvard. No kidding. And they're still that stupid. That must be a tough place to go. They're all together. Harvard, Yale. Yale wants to get rid of all the names of all the racists from all their buildings. They have a residence hall called Calhoun Hall. It's named after John C. Calhoun, South Carolina. For once, I agree with the kids. You know what? You're right. We ought to get every name off Yale, including John Yale, who was a slave trader. So if we're going to start removing names, just remember, you remove their names today, they're going to remove your names next. But this whole nonsense about we're going to erase our history. I mean, my family's relatives were Confederates, so at least I know what it's like to lose every now and then. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
On the positive side,
Yeah.
it's good to know that there are 100% constitutionalists, like Dr. Rand Paul and Amash, because I read the New American Magazine. I'm a John Birch Society. Thank God for that JBS and all that they've done. So it's positive that there are some members of Congress that are in favor of the Constitution, and they are speaking up. But like Dr. Ron Paul says, we need to audit the Federal Reserve, and I'm sure his son, he's going to do likewise.
Well, I think that there are some good people. And we all look at, there's 100 senators and 435 representatives. Each one who gets up in the morning, looks in the mirror and sees a president. But, yeah, I think there are. I mean, I'm encouraged because, up until a few years ago, until this movement really, go pre-2009, who talked about the Constitution? Nobody. Nobody talked about the Constitution. Now you have a Convention of States movement. Now you have the Balanced Budget Amendment, which is, I don't know if you know, but the Balanced Budget Amendment, it requires 34 states to have a convention called to enact it. You realize there are 28 states? There'll be 34 by the end of this year, next year. Which means all of a sudden you're going to have a news story. The balanced budget will be called. Governor Abbott down in Texas has a plan to try and call an Article 5 convention. You all know about Article 5? Okay. So there's a lot of stuff. There are very positive things. But my biggest problem is the barnacle-encrusted system in both Sacramento and Washington. Sometimes it takes a real crisis, and I mean something, unfortunately, pretty bad, to change things. California has more unfunded liabilities. We have more IOUs out there. We have no money. And as soon as they get money, they go buy another drink. Right? Because, the only way to stop an alcoholic is take away the booze. And with them, it's take away the tax dollars. So, we almost have, something has to break before things are going to change.
They stormed the Bastille.
Well, there you go. I'm right behind you.
Off with your head.
Well, but
That's what it takes.
But here's the thing. Everybody always says, no kind of thing like that will ever happen here. By the way, I'm more afraid of a left-wing fascist government than I am of a right-wing fascist government. First of all, they're almost there. They really are. The way they're trying to indoctrinate the kids and do all this other stuff. I mean, there was a story the other day on the news about, and I'm a little conflicted about the story because here are these school teachers washing the clothes of their students. Because their students are coming to school so dirty. These are poor kids down in Vacaville. So dirty that they just have to have clean clothes. So the teachers bought a couple of washer dryer. Think about that. Now, part of me understands, my compassionate side says, I get it. The more sinister side of me says, you're making them warts of the government, you're washing their clothes. Where are their parents? You know, as I said in the beginning, when you take all the religion out of the schools, I mean, out of the country, when you say that doesn't count, and oh, you're a bunch of crazy Christians, or you're a bunch of crazy this, you know something? The one thing about a religious training, and it doesn't mean you're going to go to church your whole life or anything else, but if you get the basics when you're a kid of the 10 Commandments and a few other quick things, you might just have a fighting chance. At least you got a basics of a code. We're Westerners. There's the cowboy code. There's the code. When we were kids, anybody that watched Hopalong Cassidy, or the Lone Ranger, or Gene Autry, what did they have at the end of every show? The code. Be kind to animals. Don't strike people. Don't do this, right? Be good to your mother and father. It was kind of an adjunct, almost an non-religious 10 Commandments. That's not true today. You look at the TV shows with the kids today, and it's full of propaganda. You know, oh, there's Wally the whale. Wally's disabled. He only has one fin.
Welfare.
You know, yeah. I mean, it's all based upon stuff that's ridiculous. There's no education system in this country. It's just an indoctrination system. And then you got parents that don't, you know, they'd rather, you know, invest in buying a new boat than buying the kids some books or something. Or having another iPhone. Or having another iPad. Or another, I'll tell you what, I live over in Penn Valley and I got to go to Rockland every day. And I go by the Starbucks there. I always go to gas stations for coffee. For two reasons. One, it's better coffee. Well, three reasons. Two, it's cheaper. And three, I like to talk to the guys heading out to work in the morning. Where are you going? What are you doing today? Oh gosh, we're going to lay this, or we're going to build this, or I'm going to go cut trees and have a cup of coffee with them.
Yeah. The real people.
Yeah. And then I go by the Rayleighs, and here's these cars. Their lines snaked around the block to pay $8 for a cup of coffee. I'll tell you one thing, in this country, you could dip cow pies in chocolate and people buy them. At Whole Foods. If you told them it was gluten-free. Right?
That's it.
Yeah, I mean, people, I go visit my dad. My dad lives down in Marin County, 98 years old, just renewed his medical license. You know, I still get free clinic, and I'm 64. So I go down to I said, well, Dad, you don't got anything in the refrigerator, so I'll go get us some stuff, and I'll make you dinner. So I go down to the grocery store, and I come back, and I said, Dad, I've never seen so many neurotic people in my whole life. They're in the gluten-free aisle, going like this. And he says, well, Marin County has a thin crisis. I said, what's that? He goes, they're desperate to stay thin, so they're all, you know, conflicted about what they eat. Yeah, gluten-free aisle. And when you sit there, if you ask somebody, hey, what's gluten-free? Well, it's gluten. And it's free. I saw a video. They had interviewed a bunch of people outside an LA gym, where the combined IQ of the 3 people they interviewed, was my shoe size. and they were just, so what is, they asked this woman, what's gluten-free? And she's got her hair, they kind of twirl the hair. What's good for you? And then he said, do you have celiac disease? I think I had it once, but I think my mom vaccinated me. Unless you got celiac disease, I'm sorry, eat some gluten. Any more questions? Yes, sir.
What's your take on Gary Johnson?
I like Gary. I like some of his ideas. I think one of the things that libertarians are going to have a problem with. By the way, when I say Cowboy Libertarian, it's with a small L. I don't join political parties. I've been in all of them. To me, I don't want to be a member of a club that would have somebody like me as a member. But I think that Gary's got some. The problem with libertarianism is that it's good theories, but when you come down to the raw politics in this country, it doesn't survive. Because it's not that it's nice, it's because it's all thought out, it's good stuff, don't get me wrong, and it should be incorporated, some of it. But when you're in a time of national security, things like that, those things go by the wayside. And right now you have a country that's scared and a country that's angry. And that has to be dealt with.
I just want to ask a quick one. Do you think the country has learned from not vetting Barack Obama? And then, that's why.
Have we learned? Yes, we've learned.
No voters. I think that's why Donald Trump's going to win this one. I really do.
Well, the whole vetting of Barack Obama, that was a sham. What they're doing with Hillary is the same thing, but the problem with her is she's been around 40 years. And she, there's a lot of, as we say in the business, there's a target-rich environment with Mrs. Clinton, because there's so much to look at.
She fills the screen.
Yeah. And I think that Barack Obama wasn't vetted, and there's a reason he wasn't vetted, and the other thing is that you had an opposition candidate who refused to do his job. When the Reverend Wright stuff came out, John McCain was under an obligation to bring it up, and he refused. The stuff that man said was vile. And Obama gives one speech where he says, well, I only went a couple times. Oh, yeah, he was in the amen corner for 20 years. So, there's a country, we all figured it out from the get-go. The rest of them didn't. And remember, the media was all, we're going to do this and we're going to make history, And then they want to make history with Hillary, only somebody called the radio show, this Democrat called me one time and said, you just hate women and everything else, and And I said, are you kidding me? I've been married twice. and I'll do it a third time, by God, if I have to, just to show you how much I love women. But I said, listen, you put a Margaret Thatcher on the ballot, I'm first in line election day. You put somebody on the ballot who fought her way through her party's leadership. In the English system, you don't just decide you're going to run for prime minister. You got to fight your way up through the party structure to become party leader. And then you got to become prime minister. Prime meaning first. So she fought like hell to get that job. And she deserved it. And she did a great job. And she made Reagan. That's why I think Brexit makes Trump. Same kind of forces at work. We might be distant cousins, but we think a lot alike because we're still in the English-speaking world.
Yeah, they feed off each other.
Yeah. Anyway. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd like the point you made about the Pentagon and the VA should be one thing, because the way the VA exists now, you talked about appropriations. They control the purse strings for the VA. They hire administrators that don't know one end of the rifle from the other. And there's so much administration in it and such a myriad of paperwork I was a veteran service officer for 12 years, certified, same as your county guys, except for I did it for free. And that it is such a maze to get through to get the veterans their benefits. I have done some Social Security benefits for people, and people that are really deserving. If you're really deserving, you don't need a lawyer. And a Social Security system for disability is a piece of cake compared to the VA.
I know, very good point. It's easier to get disability than it is for a VA to get their benefits, for a veteran. And you know, the fastest growing category in disability, what you say you're going to get it for. The number one reason people used to get disability was back injuries, soft tissue. Because it's very tough to, oh, I got soft tissue injury, okay, you got disability. And I'm not saying, there are people out there who really shouldn't get it, and there's people who should get it. But the number one thing now is, the number one reason people ask for it, depression. No, it's true, depression has overtaken back injuries. But just one more point on the VA thing, on the veterans. This, to me, is the simplest thing in the world. You have two giant bureaucracies. One's the war fighting and one's supposed to take care of the warrior after. So why are we saying we're separating you from this and we're putting you in this bucket? Just put the bucket next to each other or marry the buckets together. So that the guy says when he musters out, okay, I get it. You're now, guess what? You take the uniform off, go through that door. You're still one of us in the Department of Defense, and we're going to be the ones that take care of you.
Patrick, that's all by design, I think.
Yeah, but wait, remember, the Romans had a volunteer army, which was part of their downfall. But anyway, when a Roman legionnaire retired after 20 years, they got like acreage, and they were sent to one of the provinces. Well, there was a reason for it. One, they wanted to settle the provinces, and these guys were trustworthy. But they got rewards. They had the best medical system in the Roman army. They had better than civilians. Because they invested money in this person to fight the nation's wars, and they wanted to make sure that they could survive. In the Foreign Legion, if you're a Foreign Legionnaire, and you're destitute someplace in the world, and you served honorably in the French Foreign Legion, all you got to do is make a phone call to the headquarters in Marseille, tell them your name, and they will send somebody to come get you and take you to their veterans home for life.
You talk about the depression claims of Social Security. You make a claim for depression in the VA, and they're going to send you to some head shrinker, and if you have a CCW, you can kiss it goodbye.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Anything else? A couple more. 3 more, okay? 1.
I was just at
No. Next question.
The VA system, I'm an RN, and I have worked for the government before. I worked for Bill Air Force Base. I went to fill out an application for them. Oh, it's impossible. They wanted my high school records. But if you are from another country, they actually have people set up to help you go through their system. That's why we have so many foreign nurses in the VA program.
The doctor.
Sounds like the universities. They get to go in front of the
Oh, the United States of America, not the United Nations. Yes, sir.
Pass that idea on to Mr. Trump, we get our next president.
I will. Yes, ma'am.
You were talking about Starbucks,
Uh-huh.
and I've been working with teenagers in school for years. Entitlement. They come in with a Starbucks in their hand in the morning and can't afford to buy a binder.
Wow.
So they expect the school to supply it.
Yeah.
That's like insulting.
You have to have a license to have a dog. You don't have to have a license to have a child. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Hope you all enjoyed it.